Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. We're very excited for this episode. We're going to be talking about the first part of 2017, those first 8 episodes. I am one of your hosts, East Coast Sam.
I'm one of your other hosts, Legend of Ben on Poker Stars. I was doing some laundry earlier today, and I was in kind of a rush to get it done, so I almost folded, but I didn't.
Almost folded, but you didn't. Yeah, it's a shame. Those, those diamonds, man, you got to just fold them.
Anyway, guys, we are here talking about the next chapter of the crazy history of this ESPN poker broadcast. But really, before we get into that, I think we have to discuss the aftermath of that amazing interview episode we had last time with Michael Niwinski. On this recording on Zoom, it only shows the person who is talking in that moment. You don't get to see our faces while we're listening. But if you could see the raw footage, I have this a fixed grin to my face the entire hour and a half. Like my legs are shaking. I'm just so happy. My muscles hurt from all the smiling. It was so amazing.
Same here. I mean, it was just awesome. I mean, honestly, Mike, if you're listening, thank you so much again for doing this. It was such a pleasure talking to you and getting to know you a little bit better. Yeah, I mean, Ben and I were just grinning like mad people the whole time. We were so happy. It was just awesome.
My flow of speech was kind of, I was kind of starstruck, so I was kind of not talking as smoothly as I normally would. It was incredible. We got some great backstories and background onto that. Both of those main events. He made a deep run in. I did hog the questions more than you, Sam, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
I'm very happy with what we got to learn from him, and it's great that he enjoyed his time talking with us, and we might have him back in the future. That'd be fantastic for once we get to 2019.
Yeah. I mean, our father is somebody who hates poker, doesn't like watching poker, like makes fun of us for doing this podcast. And we, told him, like, you need to watch this episode with Michael. And he was just so he was so blown away and thought it was so awesome. So even non-poker people, I think, can appreciate what happened last episode. So again, thanks again, Mike, for everything. That was so awesome. And if you're interested at all in doing another episode, whether you're Michael Niwinski or somebody else listening to this podcast, drop us a line. As we mentioned, we're interested in just about anybody who has any sort of experience with the WSOP or ESPN's coverage. It doesn't matter what, how you placed in a tournament. We don't even really care if you were in the main event or not. If you were in some other event and you want us to talk about, a bracelet event that happened a few years ago, we're happy to talk about that too. I mean, we're really interested in exploring how the ESPN coverage has evolved over time. I mean, this year's a very interesting sort of step in the evolution we'll get into. So any thoughts or anything like that, share them with us, and we're happy to bring you on.
Exactly. And on that note, we really need to discuss where the 2017 World Series exists in the sort of poker timeline, because having them now concluded their usage of the November 9, the main event would now flow in that entire kind of July week and a half period of the summer. Mm-hmm. And as a result, with the main event, rather than go back to the old school coverage where they had the main event happen, they film it, and then they edit it and air it in the fall. Instead, ESPN changed it up, and borrowing from their 2011 experience, they switched back to a slight delay, half-hour delay coverage of almost pretty much every day of the main event.
Right, yeah.
Alternating between ESPN broadcasting part of that day and then usually concluding the rest of that day on PokerGo.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting format. I mean, I like the fact that they're showing everything. It does add a comprehensive vibe to it. It lets you get a sense of who the players are a little bit better. But on the other hand, if you're just a casual viewer on ESPN, you're seeing some random chunk of day one. It feels a little less consequential to me, and it can be a little confusing.
Well, it's funny because this would be the structure for the next couple of years, but PokerGo would kind of become more and more of a prominent player in the poker streaming ways of the main events. The schedule day-to-day, as you could imagine on a major channel like ESPN, there was some days would get more love than others. I always felt that day 6 and day 7 are really the ones you want to get as much time with. And sometimes for this style of broadcasting, you'd get some very limited looks at those days. And you'd get maybe a greater look on day 1, and then you'd see like none of the next day 2, and then it would be kind of inconsistent. And the actual commentators You would normally have Lon and Norm. There might be a third guy in there, Sfandiari. Maybe Nick Schulman gets in there. They'd mix it up a little bit. So each day, because if you're broadcasting for that long, they need a break. They can't just stream
Right,
50 hours every day for a week and a half. So it would be it wouldn't be super monotonous on the broadcast side, but you can imagine with a lot of commercial breaks, you'd maybe watch one hand and go to commercial break. They a lot of repeating of, let's show the same big stacks on the outer tables. 5 minutes later, oh, it's the same 3 big stacks. Okay, great. So again, I have mixed. I enjoy. So it's funny because the 2017 Day 1A in many ways was kind of the origins of this podcast.
Yeah.
Because there was the infamous hand, which we'll discuss in a few minutes, between Vanessa Selbst and Gail Bowman that we actually recorded on this very computer I'm using right now. And we're like flipping out, oh my God, what's going on? It's like a 5-minute long video. I don't think we'll ever keep that to ourselves. That's a little embarrassing that in retrospect. But that hand, our sort of joint enjoyment of that experience watching that live kind of set the tone for our view on poker television and ultimately led us to form this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, one of the nice things about doing sort of long form television like that with several hours is you find a diamond in the rough. When there's a big hand, it feels so much bigger because you've seen hours of poker up till that point. So it just sort of stands out a little bit better. And yeah, that hand, which I'm sure anybody who's seen that first episode of the coverage knows which hand we're talking about, but we will get into it. Yeah, that was incredible. That was probably my favorite moment watching poker live of all time, was that hand.
It's probably my favorite of all time. I'd have to really scan my brain to really think about it. There's a couple other big hands too that are pretty creative too, though, that we'll probably get to later. And as you could imagine, so as ESPN is live broadcasting this entire main event for the most part, where does the episodes come into the play? So these episodes were actually produced after the fact.
Right.
I assume that they had to have aired on television on ESPN maybe at some point in time. I'm not sure, but or they might have just gone straight up to PokerGo, because I didn't actually have access to this content, this particular main event, until a couple of years after the fact, and I found a lot of the Day 4, Day 5 stuff on Dailymotion of all things.
Okay.
And then I saw a couple episodes there, and then obviously once we had the PokerGo access, then we could do the rest of them. So for the most part, I kind of had picked through some of these episodes when we first subscribed to PokerGo, just before we even done the podcast, just to kind of see what I hadn't seen before. But a lot of this is fresh for me.
Yeah, a lot of this is fresh for me too. I mean, I remember watching a lot of this live, not everything, but a lot of it live. So the edited versions, this is all new to me.
Yeah. So again, a changing of the guard slightly in the ESPN world. Niwinski, he kind of mentioned he thought maybe the ratings might have been at their highest after 2016. That was what facilitated the switch from. But I'm sure it's a combination of maybe that and maybe just the fact that there was no longer the number 9, so they had to mix things up. And also ESPN, the history of that channel deserves a longer take than what we can give it. And losing, ratings, subscribers, things changing. Obviously, they felt the need to take a chance, especially in the summer. That summer, there's no football or something, so that takes away some of that, fills up some of their schedules in poker to compensate. Makes sense. And so this made for a unique kind of edit. I mean, we'll get into this. Many changes in this entire coverage.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of a wild card of more than I probably thought 2014 was, as far as mixing up the formula and mixing up how they wanted to control the edit. So before we get into the episodes, though, and the changes, the 2017 main event, slightly bigger than the main event before it, over 7,000 players, 7,221, with 1,084 players making the money, a little over 8 million, about 8.15 million for first place. This spans 18 episodes, and a lot of PokerGo advertising and sort of reaching into the broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, they're sort of, it's the equivalent of the Jack Link's beef jerky, all those advertisements and stuff. I don't mind a couple plugs here and there, but it definitely felt kind of long toward the end of the episode. And they would plug PokerGo multiple times throughout each episode. And it just felt a little too much. I mean, in terms of the graphical changes, I don't necessarily mind a lot of the graphics being changed. The intro is a new song, We Can Be Heroes, which I think is one of the better WSOP songs. Still not as good as Tell Me Why I'm Still Crying Over You, but still pretty good. And then you did mention in terms of the commentators, we do have field reporters. Kara Scott is back, and for the first time, Mr. Joe Stapleton shows up in the broadcast, kind of closest to the nuts that we've had in a while, sort of offering comic relief and lull random goofy moments here and there. I'm just going to be blunt. I don't like Joe Stapleton.
I'm not a fan either. He tries to be too funny, and he just not my taste. Even it was even more prominent during the live ESPN coverage day to day, because they would just blatantly have, let's go to Joe Stapleton, let's see if we'll make you laugh or not, and then get back to the poker action. Here they just take segments from that bits and put it right into the episode. Usually have some player that was relevant to the episode, and some big hand or some costume or something like that, or some bust out. So not my cup of tea. I appreciate the attempt to do something different, but nonetheless, not a fan.
Give me the side action championship. Give me Helmuth making burritos. Something else. Some guy getting hit in the face with a football. Something else other than Joe Stapleton.
I know,
He's trying way too hard to be funny. And Norm in this season, a few too many jokes about him being on his phone and using the internet and whatever. They did like 15 different Norm on his phone jokes. Did you notice that?
I noticed that, and also they did their typical intro, then the song intro, and then firsthand, and cut back to Lana Norm, and then that first Lana Norm behind that green screen. There's kind of a more concerted effort to have kind of like a 35-second sort of comedic conversation between them. So it just takes a little bit longer, comparative to 03, 04, 05, where it's just like, hey guys, we're here to be here reporting on, and day 2, make some chips, make some hands, or go home. Here it's like, well, on my phone, Lana, about my wife, oh yeah, it just takes a little bit longer to get back to the poker action. And considering that these episodes are all the 45-minute length, no supersized episodes, that is taking away from the actual poker, because you have less time to cover those hands.
Absolutely. And in terms of the November 9 changing, now that we've gone through the coverage and we've seen all the November 9 episodes, how do you feel about them changing back to the regular format?
Well, it's funny because during the summer you have more free time usually. So if you're a bit more able to kind of watch this content, over July, you can stay up late and probably watch it. In November, you might have work or school or something, so you're not able to really watch the late parts of those final table days. So I think as an audience member, it just changes up what time of year it's broadcasting. Obviously, for the poker players, it's a whole different story. We're not in the poker world like that, so it's not offensive to us. Niwinski mentioned he'd prefer it if it was just flat out the next day or the day after that or whatever, so that other players can't get coaching and mix their game up, because they're going to try to take advantage of the less experienced players. But I don't mind it. I'm not really one that falls into hype or anything. So the whole, marketing of it didn't really affect me. And granted, I'm not really into the, the news world so much. I'm not even sure how they really marketed it in the first place. If just a few ads here and there, like ESPN would with the episodes inside the episodes. So I don't mind it.
Yeah, I don't mind it either. I mean, my opinion, when I think I said this back in our 2008 episode during the first November 9 episode, was that I felt like it was a blessing, and that it does give players a chance to coach and hone their skills. But on the other hand, the more connected players like Chino Ream, Newhouse, et cetera, would be able to use these high, well-connected players for themselves, and they'd have sort of a leg up on the less experienced players who didn't have those connections. Yeah, and looking back on it, I'd say that's essentially the opinion I have. I mean, it's a blessing and it's a curse, and it's a good point that you bring up in terms of the coverage itself. Like for us, in the summertime, we've got plenty of free time, but in the fall we might not. So it's kind of nice to just sort of go through all of it right away, watch the whole season, and then see, what happens. You're better able to craft storylines. I mean, in terms of promoting the WSOP, I mean, I try to do a little bit of research for each one of these podcasts, and you come off a couple of articles, in local news outlets, hey, this guy from New Jersey, he's at the World Series of Poker main event. Maybe he'll win, maybe he won't. That's about it. I mean, a couple news articles here and there. I mean, how much promotion does that really do? I don't know. So I don't really miss the November 9. I mean, I'm happy if some people like it or some people don't like it. No harm, no foul either way for me, but I do prefer kind of just getting it over with.
I'm with you there. I'm with you there. And then a couple other major changes is the actual poker rooms that will be shown. So this kind of aligns it more now to modern day. So the Rio had multiple poker rooms, and for the most part, they had been in just the same room the entire tournament in years past. Here they mixed up, and now there's the Brasilia room, the Amazon room, and the Pavilion room. And the cinematography for each room actually is a little bit different. So especially in the Pavilion room, on a couple of those early episodes in this season of episodes, you have the camera, just the lighting is different in that room, so it just kind of looks like a whole different sort of movie scene than in years past. So I kind of appreciate that, even though we're not in there for very long. So it's kind of, you get a taste of it, and then it's kind of taken away from you right at the start of the episodes.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the biggest change also, days 1 through 3 are back.
I know, we did.
Hallelujah. So now that's both good and bad. They wanted to clearly get some TV time for a lot of the classic pros, get a couple of particular hands in the edits. Guys like Negreanu, Esfandiari, Kasuf, Vanessa Selbst. They wanted to really get those people in the edit. If they had cut out those first few days, they would have been completely absent. So on one hand, that's great, but it does lead to some really awkward edits and some really badly paced episodes too. So we'll get into that episode as we go along. Again, this is the last time really that we'll see those early days in a tournament. So
that's true, yeah. And a lot of these older players, not that they're not talented or anything, but we really don't really see from them pretty much after this year. I mean, Scotty Wynn doesn't really make any more deep runs. Jamie Gold doesn't really pop up in poker anymore. So this is sort of their last hurrah, so to speak. So it was nice to see them for one last time, even if they didn't really do anything.
Yeah, but also the pacing of these episodes is all over the map, because because you're featuring these early days, you don't have the episode count to go to like 4 episodes per day. So the first half of this 2017 main event is what we're covering, and this really kind of covers the first half of that style of kind of old school edit where each day gets 1 or 2 episodes, like in the classic era, as opposed to the 1 episode per level structure we have had for the most part for the last 6 or 7 main events. And there's just things like the tournament summary, which is kind of copy and paste from that, like in that live feed that they did. Highlighting how many players are left, the big stacks, notable stacks left. And probably one of my least favorite changes also is they got rid of that chips behind graphic that was in 2016 that I like so much, because it's really odd, because I see can't be that hard to fathom. Some of the streams nowadays that are far more low tech have that in the broadcasting nowadays. So I don't understand why they would toss that out.
It's a weird omission, definitely.
Yeah. I think that's for the most part the change. So it's a lot of pretty substantial changes, and I think it does lead to a weaker main event than I thought this was going to be. But again, this is 18 episodes. I've only watched the first 10. I do think it gets better over time as the refocus back to the sort of modern edit style kicks in, and we really get to know these players better. But to start things off, episode 1 is day 1 AB. They don't really say A or B in that, but I know from my background of having watched this live 5 years ago. So we get unfortunately in these early episodes just pretty frequent featured table switching outs, oftentimes for maybe 1 hand. So you imagine multiple table 1s, table 2, table 3 get like 1 hand each, so it's just kind of a mess. So to start off with, though, we do get that classic nostalgic table with Noah Schwartz, Gail Bowman, Vanessa Selbst, and some French guy named Delamar. And it's really kind of a Vanessa Selbst episode for the first half.
Yeah, I mean, just watching the first half, you'd be thinking, oh, Selbst is going to have a deep run, look at all these hands, look at her speaking French, definitely changing up her table presence a little bit.
Yeah, and Selbst runs into some pretty hard luck. I mean, she lasts 22 hands on day 1, which is less than 1 level. And she actually, in the very first hand in the edit, she makes a pretty good fold of top 2 pair against top sets, which She didn't realize at the time was a good fold because she misread one of her opponent's folded cards afterwards. So kind of funny, and kind of speaking fake French with French-speaking Gail Bowman at the table, kind of like trying to confirm it's not French like Gail. So that's a pretty funny hand. And then of course the amazing, one of the best day one hands possibly of all time. I mean, day one. Selbst against Bowman. With Schwartz in there just to kind of be the token guy in the hand. And with 2 aces for Vanessa Selbst, 2 sevens for Gail Bowman. They both flop a set on an all-club board. And then Bowman turns quads.
And the rest is history. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, this was such an incredible hand to watch live. Because both, I like Selbst. I don't really have a problem with her personality or her style of play. And then I like Bowman a lot from her play in 2012. So to see them both flop sets, I'm like, oh my God, this is so crazy, set over set. And then when that 7 hits on the turn, both you and I remember this exactly, that at the exact same time, oh my God. And I think that's when you turn the camera on. And I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, Bowman makes it 1.7K with quads. Selbst raises to 5.8. Bowman calls. Selbst puts in 16.2K.
Into 14K.
16.2K. And then Bowman shoves over her, and then Selbst stews for about a minute or so before finally calling. And it's so crazy. I mean, it's just, if you haven't seen this hand, I think it's on PokerGo. You can go and watch it. I mean, it's just such a crazy, on
a lot of levels, it's very entertaining. And plus the level of poker analysis and strategy on this by Selbst is quite admirable, because she's looking at the suits in her aces to see what combination of maybe ace 7 that Bowman could possibly have. And her deciding factor was she did not have the blockers that would prevent Bowman from having ace 7 of hearts, I believe it was.
I think yeah, diamonds maybe, I don't remember.
Ace 7 of hearts, so I guess I call. So it's those fine little details that influence a top poker pro's strategy mid hand, and that's just something that we've never seen in that sort of style before. We've never seen someone analyze what to do going off of the individual suits of like one card. So that was very, very impressive. And as far as could Selbst have folded, it's not a easy, spot to be in, but she didn't do herself any favors by betting more than the pot on the river.
Yeah.
I think that especially on day one, it's that like when you have the second nuts, you just kind of have to, adjust your game ever so slightly when it's not out of the realm of possibility that the top nuts is in their range. If it's like, if you 4-3 and the second nuts is like 5-4, okay, you can probably make that call. But in that spot there, I think you have to not put yourself in that spot in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, you can make your bet sizes smaller. You're still going to lose a lot at the end. I don't think you can get away with it. I don't think you can fold the boat there. I'm sorry, you just can't. I mean, Bowman also, to her credit, played the hand very well. Selbst asked her after the shove, what do you have? Tell me what you have. And Bowman just was stone-faced, didn't say anything. I think she also knew, the circumstance of the hand. I think she said after the fact that she thought that she had Selbst had aces. So she read the situation perfectly for her spot. Yeah, I mean, Selbst, don't make it 16.2K, make it 10K, make it something else. I mean, again, you're going to lose a lot of chips there, but there's definitely a way you can cut your losses and try to get by the skin of your teeth.
Now, the starting stack was still 50,000 in this main event. Selbst had a pretty rough start, so she's not only about 43,000 when that hand began. So when Bowman wins that hand, she hits about 90,000 or so in that pot. And then Selbst, again, she said she almost folded, and then she goes over to Joe Stapleton and pays $20 to him to listen to the bad beat story, and then $20 more to say she played it right, and then gets the birthday gift of that money back. Again, kind of a cringe-worthy segment for Joe Stapleton, but it does not detract from that amazing hand that we watched here.
And Bowman just doesn't get anything going afterward. You're thinking, okay, she's got 90K. She's done a couple deep runs in the main. She just was not able to get anything going after that point, especially when she gets moved off of the feature table, which is just unfortunate, but that's the way it goes, I guess.
Now, on that point, so in this episode, it just seems like that feature table goes away and then you come sliding. But I'm pretty sure that's day 1B that's starting into that feature table spot. It's not a new table on day 1A. Bowman was on that table the whole, I think, for most of day 1. So that was a misleading edit. And then we get 3 secondary feature tables: Scotty Wynn, Jamie Gold, Scott Abrams, and Phil Locke amongst those players. None of them really are in the episode really enough to make any sort of impact on the viewing. There's really no narrative besides Selbst and Bowman in that first half. After that, it's just kind of, let's just show every other table because that was in the live feed, so we have to include them at some point.
Yeah, I mean, the only other narrative thread that's sort of introduced is Steve Palachuk, who was bought into the main event because his friend had pancreatic cancer and left money in his will for both Steve and some of his friends to go and play the main event. So that's sort of the charity heart of the show sort of segment that will be talked about in a couple episodes. Yeah, I mean, beside, Selbst and Bowman is what takes this episode up a notch for me. I like seeing Jamie Gold because I'm a Jamie Gold fan, but yeah, I mean, he just, wins a hand with pocket tens. That's about it. And, we do get one little moment where Kui wins at a table and a certain gentleman walks up to him and gets a photo with him. And that gentleman is wearing a very exotic shirt, but I doubt we won't see anything else from him. So
And then on the outer tables, we get kind of an old school kind of pan of various players, past champions, and then a good slew of them being busted out, shown at the very end of the episode. Oh, this guy busted out, then this guy busted out. Just very matter of factly. Couple of things I thought was amusing was we had a very tilty Mike Matusow when he does not get paid off with a couple of kings. Like, why does nobody have a hand when I have a hand? Nobody. And then the sequel moment to that sequence is Doug Polk making a epic hero call for 1,500 to Matusow, winning the hand. And Matusow's like, 1,500, 1,500. I bet 1,500. And we got a surprise proposal of champagne on day 1. Kind of a weird time to celebrate. Day 1's not very celebratory in the first place for the main event.
Okay.
And then, so it felt like the first time we really had seen a modern poker day 1 action. A lot of big blinds in play, so a lot of chips swapping around. Some suited lower cards being played. That sort of being more commonplace in the early days of the tournament. So that was refreshing. But having this many featured tables for a very limited amount of time really dilutes any focus, any sort of narrative power of the episode. And it just seems like they wanted to have a Selbst episode and they just scrambled to make enough stuff to have one episode to do that and not really care about the rest of the episode.
Yeah, I mean, the Matusow moments were funny just because Matusow's Matusow. But yeah, I mean, it's really just the Selbst and Bowman hand that makes this episode worthwhile, and the rest of it just isn't that consequential.
And at the same note for episode 2, day 1C, which is again the biggest day 1 historically in the main event, because that's there's no break between day 1 and day 2, or it's a little bit shorter. So more players are in there, but it's just another very dull, unfocused episode. Brandon Negrano and Jason Mercier are the main folks on table 1. You get Mike Sexton, rest in peace, John Giwanda wearing a mask, foreshadowing, Doc Sands on table 2, but just not a very remarkable episode whatsoever.
Yeah, Kasuf comes back, and Stapleton, being Stapleton, just runs his memes by him in the forms of questions. Very fun. I mean, Kasuf doesn't really do anything. He just, does his typical jabbering nonstop. Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing to this episode at all. I mean, Negrano's there. He's always entertaining to watch. It doesn't really get much going. I mean, he wins a couple of hands here or there. That's about it. We get a flashback segment to 2015 because we have to see that again. There's a lot of flashbacks in this season. We didn't really mention that, but yeah, it's just lack of focus, nothing really to hang your hat on. The poker playing's fine. They clearly wanted Negrano and Mercier to go up against each other and have a clash, but they both knew to stay out of each other's way. We see one hand against, Mercier's got tens, Negrano's got ace kings. There's a little clash there. That's about it. I mean,
there's John Giwanda kind of does suffer through one kind of brutal runouts where his opponent flops a flush and then a 5 card straight on the board, and Giwanda has a jack, which is the overcard to the straight on the board, so he has the second nut straight, and so he gets kind of screwed by that. But Again, I'm really reaching, calling that a highlight. That's just kind of a, tough break for Joanna, really, who has not been a persistent character in any of these main events for quite some time. So he's just kind of a, token. Oh, it's 05. He made a deep run 05. Hey, it's Shonda, and then I guess there is a decent ending on the outer table where Esfandiari kisses and touches his way to a great hero call, feeling his opponent's heart. So kind of cardiology nursing it up out there with top pair. But again, just kind of a weak episode. We learned about Mercier's marriage to Natasha Mercier, or Barbour, now Mercier. Just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I think the highlight of the episode was during that Esfandiari hand. That guy, Belsiu, he has his chips spread out in a stack that's on the felt. It was very interesting to just see him take chips and put it in the middle, but his chips are spread out like that. That's about it. There's really nothing to hang your hat on. This is one of the weaker episodes ever. I mean, nothing.
It's up there.
I'm sorry, there's just really nothing to talk about. I mean, Kasuf, we just kind of got sick of the guy, and he doesn't really even do anything that interesting here.
There's a rainbow rant, as I'll call it, and that's really about it. And so episode 3, almost just as equally kind of as rushed of an episode, we have day 2A/B/C. Again, kind of combining 2 different days into one episode, kind of without really saying it's 2 different days of the tournament. And so with this, we know how many players survived into day 2, 5,519. That was nice to know, because we don't often see that for days 1 through 3 too frequently. And we got a total of 3, count them, 3 table ones at one point in this episode. I'm not sure off the top of my head if it was 2A, 2B, 2C. It wouldn't surprise me if it was. And then we get the quickest of table 2 action, and then outer tables with a lot of blood in the outer tables. But we kind of have kind of a 3-act structure. We have this quick Kui win story where he has almost 100,000 chips and ends up going out very quickly with all those chips against also Mr. James Aikenhead, from 9. Making a token appearance there. And then really it's the next couple of tables where some absolutely decent poker play and occurrences do happen in the episode.
Yep, we get Helmuth coming back, doing his Helmuth shtick. You'll take this one, I take the next one, stuff like that. And he's mixing it up, and he's putting a lot of pressure out there, so props to him. We get an interesting sort of situation with Maria Ho, which is another sort of heartfelt moment where she meets a woman who has breast cancer and wants to play a sit and go with her and Daniel Negreanu. I thought that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, I didn't know about that story, so that was a surprise to see for sure. And there was a table before Helmuth was on table 1, but we'll get to the Helmuth stuff first. So Helmuth, a lot of aces running into ace, king, and 10s on that table. Helmuth making some crazy correct pre-flop folds of 10s, ace, king. Helmuth has some good Helmuthisms. It's good for ratings when I fold ace, king against aces. Just some funny stuff there. The other tailmates there, Dario Manieri, who actually he has some history with from the big game. The short TV show, and also Francoeur, Francois, who was a tablemate of Kasuf and Stacey Madison the year prior, so one of the last ladies standing in that main event. So again, that was kind of a nice little table there. Francoeur unfortunately flops the nuts in one hand and loses, and has to deal with her tablemate saying, "I apologize for over celebrating." No, I don't.
Yeah, Helmuth, folding ace, king to ace is just always a sick spot. Just folding 10s. He really was on his A game here, I think. I think he did a very good job finding his spots and just managing to stay out of harm's way.
And then the other table one we have in this episode is Doug Polk, one of your favorites from back in the day, and Sam Grafton.
Right.
Sam Grafton really more in the action than Doug Polk, even though they both had pretty sizable chip stacks at this point. Sam Grafton gets hero called by his opponent after he talks up a storm to him when there's sort of a paired board and his opponent has a big pocket pair that's under to the overcards on the board. Basically, tough call and a pretty big pot. And then Grafton very angry at his opponent after they do that, the classic, I thought I did misraise, miscall situation with the wrong chips or something. And then his opponent said, I swear I didn't mean to do what it looked like I did.
Exactly, yeah.
And then a pretty wild one out.
It was a mix-up. I think it was an earnest mistake.
And then Grafton does say, okay, if you swear on it, then I believe you. It's not like, he was laughing off it about it or anything. So, but again, it's some pretty good action considering the kind of the dull stuff we had seen besides that one Vanessa Selbst hand on the first episode. And then there's some bust outs on the outer tables. It's fun. Yari bust, Maria Ho bust, Selbst-Baumann bust, Negrano bust, Morgan Jacobson bust. Will Kassouf, and probably one of the more amusing busts of this main event, tries to bribe his opponent into folding when his opponent is essentially free rolling him. Right. They have the same straight, and then the opponent rips a flush. That was pretty funny too.
Yep, and he gets a big round of applause after Kassouf busts, which was a nice little moment, I guess. And that's the last we hear of Kassouf in the main event in terms of that, so it's nice.
Yeah. My biggest beef with this episode is that Helmuth goes from a pretty big stack on the first table to a very short stack on the R table off screen.
Yeah, I know, right?
When that quick final montage of like players busting out happens, we're like, what? He's almost out? Now he's gone? That's not a very satisfying edit.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So again, that's one of the problems with this sort of old schoolish edit style is that things like that will happen to it. But again, it's by far the best episode up to this point. And so that was good, at least to flip the needle a little bit better onto the positive side.
Of course, yeah.
But then we're right back to kind of the rushing, awkward sort of paced edit. So with day 3, episode 4 of day 3, with a little over 2,500 players left, we have our money bubble episode.
Right.
And once again, we have 2 featured tables for one hand each. And then besides that, though, it's just the Chino Ream show.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it being the Chino Ream show because he's an interesting guy. But yeah, I'm with you. And Howard also appears here a little bit, has one of those disgusting same hand versus same hand. He gets the flush and the guy busts, which is always just so gross to see. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is definitely Chino Ream's moment in the sun for the first time in quite a long time, since 2008 pretty much.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that's really about it for this episode. I mean, we just described it to you. It's nice to see Ream play it up a little bit. Also have an odd back and forth with Howard. I mean,
yeah, well, Chino's like, I get my ace-king money back from that. Well, he was referring to old hands. Like, I got my 8-6 money back, my 5-4 money back. That's kind of funny. But, and again, it's the Chino Ream show for pretty much the whole episode, because we only get 2 hands from the other featured tables. And I actually don't have any notes or highlights from the outer table action besides just my list of who was featured. So Pavlicek still alive from that sort of background story from day 1. We get Negrano discussing the player KL Cleaton, mm-hmm. who I saw in Vegas last year, actually. So that was cool to see him in his first television appearance here, making the money. And again, they made money with 1,084 players left. The bubble, pretty forgettable. They don't really have much drama or any really suspense building up to it. It's pretty rushed, which you could expect when you're having one episode cover a whole day. Again, pretty well, especially when it's day 3 of all things, when everything gets real. We get first timers though. That bit does appear now that they've weeded out the amateurs that were in the first couple days eliminated. So we get Mickey Kraft, John Hesp, and Scott Blumstein, who will all be major players going forward. So that was kind of, sneak them into the beginning so that they'll be relevant later. So that was fine, but it's a pretty forgettable episode besides some good Chino stuff. And so kind of 1 out of 4 for a good episode so far in this as we're halfway through the first half.
Yeah, I mean, Stapleton's segment was so funny when he asked Scotty a bunch of questions, and the joke is Scotty says "baby," get it? Because he says "baby" a lot in real life. That's the joke.
I mean, I got one from him, so I understand, but it doesn't mean much when you're not being told it.
Yep. On to the next episode.
Moving on. So. Episode 5. Now we have day 4, part 1. So slightly more in the less rushed zone. We can at least have a bit more focus. With 1,084 players left, we have 2 sort of one table 1, and then halfway in the episode we get a brand new table 1, which again contrasts with how we normally have at least one full episode of a feature table before we move on. But It is what it is. And then we get also just these sort of hit and runs on tables 2 and 3, like, oh, we'll show one player, oh, they're gone, okay, hit and run, next table over here, oh, they're gone, okay, we'll never set table again.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not a fan of those hit and runs.
Me neither. I don't like it. Show us one table, show us how the dynamic plays out.
Yes. So table 1, to start off this episode, though, we have 2 kind of major players here. Sophia Lovegren, who has 1 million chips, great, and anti-gate victim Jeffrey Lisandro, who is, I guess, a beacon for controversy because he gets called what I can only call RFID gate.
It's the weirdest controversy I think we've explored thus far. I think I mentioned when we were talking about Kasuf last time how I find unintentionally hilarious players to be far more funny than intentionally hilarious players. And it's just Lisandro, I'm not trying to be mean to the guy. I don't want to be mean to him, but he's just so unintentionally hilarious. How prickly he is. To start off the episode, he showed a clip of him turning to somebody on his reel and going, how long am I going to be at this feature table? He doesn't want to be there. He's talking about how he doesn't want to be a movie star. He just wants to play poker. It's so strange. It's such a weird
and unfortunately, the some of the best parts of RFID gates are only part of the live coverage of this day 4 of the main event. So the episode does get a good bunch of the Jack Effel Lisandro confrontation, but there's a lot more that I showed you once on PokerGo before they took the live stuff off the app. And so the context was that he had missed the scanner with one of his hands, and then a director comes by to tell Lisandro, you need to show your cards, and Lisandro was upset that after missing one hand that they were singling him out to annoy him. And it's funny because Lisandro, he actually busts 2 players within the first half hour of that day. So he's trying to break the table, get off of the feature table that way. So he actually he wins 2 flips or one I think ace or ace 10 and one flip to start off the day on a good note. And then so there's some great quotes here. Tell the man in the truck I don't want to be here, and then yelling at Jack Effel. It was just really funny stuff.
Jack, I'm showing my cards, Jack. I'm showing my cards.
I want to sit down and settle down and have my coffee. Is that it? Do you want to have the last word, or is that it?
We're trying not to be mean, but I'm sorry. Just it sounded like he was on the verge of tears. It was crazy.
And then when Lisandro was playing back at Effel was like, "You can't talk to me like that. What? You can't take it. You can't take it, man. You can't take that." Because Lisandro's English is not perfect. So, again, kind of like Henry Tran from the years prior, there's a slight word language barrier, or accent barrier at least there. But it's just a great sort of poker fight, and I can't. I'm laughing just thinking about it because it was just so funny.
PokerGo, please just upload the raw footage of just those interactions. Just upload the raw footage, please.
And then it's funny because Phil Locke was in the booth during the live day of that on ESPN, and then while that fight's happening, just as it's ending, and the camera fades over to the featured table again, and you see an all-in happening between Chambers Kuhn and some other player, and then Block's like, oh, that was a fun sidebar. Now we have ace 10 against 2-5, so let's see what's going on. It was just a great edit how that worked out. And so again, it's a case of that's why I really want that live feed of this main events to be watchable, and hopefully PokerGo will someday correct that. So that fun side story aside, the only other notable highlight I think from this action here would be a very action flop between Lovegren and Lisandro. Yeah. Not on a blood, but a lot of action where Lisandro has another great line. You got a pretty face, but I can't do you any favors. When she asks, can you if I pull you show? When Lisandro flops a pair and a royal flush draw, and just great, and then top pair for Lovegren. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, Lovegren plays pretty well. She has a set over set situation where she manages to get, some good value out of the other guy. Yeah, I mean, nothing too much in terms we, start to see some of these other players a little bit more detail. You see Scotty Wynn also just not playing very well, kind of having, they keep comparing his blow up to the blow up he did in 2007. And of course, those two have nothing to do with each other because that's The final table versus
Yeah,
day
so
3.
again, halfway in the episode, the new table of San Martino starting to win. Jonathan Hilton and Sam Stein takes the place of that first table one, and pretty smooth sailing for Sam Stein. And then we get a return of the graphical error virus in this ESPN focus, where at one point starting to win gets knocked down to 89,000 chips, and they refer to it as 4 blinds. No, it's not 4 blinds. That's like 8 blinds. And it's a pretty glaring error when the blinds weren't even any close to that big at that time.
Yeah, that's a weird error. They need to fact check better.
Yeah, and then then possibly one of the best parts of the episode, unfortunately, is not an actual hand. Kara Scott mentions a hand that Scully to Win was in, where it was quads over sets, where Scully to Win turned superior quads against other quads and a bottom set. So that was unfortunate that we didn't get to see that hand happen in the edit.
Yep.
So again, a very solid first half, dominated by some great RFID gate, and second half episode not so great, not as fun. The scientists trying to win trend down and bust out. So all the past winners of the main event are now gone from the tournament.
Very true.
And then part 2 of day 4, or episode 6, we have the same featured table. Sam Stein, San Martino, Hilton still there. And then table 2, we get a fresh table 2, and one of my favorites, Mickey Kraft, enters the spotlights, and so we get to see he'll be a big player for the next couple of episodes, and so that's good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we get one of the sicker hands of the season thus far, with Liv Boeree managing to fold a worse bow, which is just such a sick spot that she's able to do that. Yeah, I mean, we're starting to sort of see the poker play start to crop up a little bit better now. Kraft is he's just a lot of fun. I mean, I do really like him a lot. He's just very naturally gregarious guy, but he's not like hamming it up or playing to the cameras or anything, which is nice. This episode was a little bit better, I'd say, than the ones.
It's funny. I like the Mickey stuff, but I didn't care for everything else really, besides the livery hand you mentioned. Mickey Kraft at one point is a chip leader with about 3.4 million. He plays pretty crazy, like overbetting the pot many times, very spewy. He actually trends down about 1 million chips from his peak as day 4 ends. There's one particularly, Mickey Kraft style hand where he goes all in for more than double the pot against a player who knows he's ahead, but just can't call up 2 4s on this sort of like ace 3-3-2 like 9 board, and Kraft of course has king high, so he makes the wrong fold. It is kind of nice to see a young-ish Dario. He looks completely different and younger in this main event compared to how he'll look in a couple of main events.
He kind of does, doesn't he? I mean, he looks like the same person, but it's just like his skin complexion's a little different and all that. It's odd.
So I'm probably I can't call this a solid episode of my books. Maybe you like it more than me, but I think better than the first couple episodes, but still below average for the.
Yeah, that's what I would agree with, and we're trending up now as the season's progressing, which is nice.
And then day 5 rolls around, and this is really where I think we're finally hitting that solid groove in this main event. So we have a little under 300 players left in the main event by this point, and we get a fresh table 1. Of course, we have the UK pro Charlie Carroll.
Yep.
Greg Mueller, Kathy Liebert,
yep.
And later in the episode, Mr. Iverson Snuffer.
Yeah.
One of the most badass names and table looks of all time, but he's later in the episode, so we'll go in order a little bit here. It's kind of the Charlie Carroll show, though, for the most part. We learn a little bit about his background, how he was bullied in school for maybe having autism or Asperger's or something like that. So that was, a unique take. And now he's kind of bullying people on the table in poker. So it's kind of a funny little contrast. And then table 2, we have Connor Drynan and Matt Moss.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good mixture of players. I mean, I like that we're having, people like Matt Moss and Drynan who are, pretty accomplished professionals sort of mixing it up. But yeah, this is definitely very much the Carroll show with a brief appearance by Heisenberg in there.
I mean, Carroll absolutely wrecks Snuffer. Table talk with pretty much always inferior cards. So just very good stuff here. Kind of, we rarely see this sort of one-sided, sort of big stack bullying against one player in particular, not at a final table, like ever. So it's very fun, and there's some good lines here and there, like Snuffer says, "You seem like a great guy," and then Carol, "I am a great guy." And then while this is happening, we see on table 2, Matt Moss goes from 3 million chips to 0 million chips very quickly,
Right,
while
yeah.
Ryan gets 2 very quick doubles ups in quick succession. So sort of very opposite trends for them on that table 2.
Yeah, it is an interesting dynamic, isn't it?
And it's really one of the few episodes in this entire main event that didn't feel rushed. I feel like we had time to have the table settle in, the hands played out. We weren't cutting the table or to new tables every few minutes. We really could focus on what we could watch there.
Yeah, I mean, the hands really play out. We get to hear a lot of table dynamic, a lot of table talk also in between hands, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's good to sort of see a little bit more of the players' personalities here, especially because now 2017, we're now sort of into the headphones and hoodies era where people aren't talking as much. So it's nice that we had a couple players running deep. We can hear a little bit more about them. The first timer segment, we also hear a little bit more about Blumstein and Hesp and Kraft. So it's sort of good to hear from them as well. That gives us an opportunity to hear more from them.
Yeah, and to the point of we see a lot of Carol and Snuffer. We lose Liebert and Mueller in this episode.
Right.
So we're going to have the old P players from a while ago go out, and the new characters kind of merge in. So that was kind of a symbolic changing of the guard of sorts at that table as well. And so at episode's end, we have 190 players left. And then episode 8 does kind of return to the rushing things to kind of wrap up the day, though. So this episode will end with only 85 players left, with a pretty substantial jump from like 150 left to 85 left in the last few minutes of the episode. But again, the same table 1, we get Carol and Snuffer. Snuffer finally gets the better of Carol, a couple hands here. Being a short stack, though, you're only going to make so much from those wins. But he gets a 2-outer with 2 jacks after Carol hits a lucky ace on the turn. And then Carol rebets him with 7-3 at one point, and gets called Slim Shady by Snuffer.
I'll lay 17-1 that Slim Shady doesn't fold. Great line. And
then that table gets moved to the outer table later on, and we get some great talk during a big hero call by Snuffer, where Carol actually says, "You're going to call me with a 7 or like A7? I'm going to look very silly." Snuffer has A7. He calls, and he looks silly. So a great little fortune teller moment for Carol and Snuffer there too.
Yeah, and we get our first poker moment from John Hesp making a call, big re-raise with a second pair, so good for him. And we sort of see our first poker moment from him and a little bit about his chops, as well as from Blumstein a little bit, even though he, Lamb kind of makes the bad move there.
Well, it's a very awkward play where Lamb they have a big stacks at this point, and Lamb folds pocket jacks on a full house board of 6s and 3s. So very strange. I can't guess that Lamb put him on quads there, so I guess he put him on a pair bigger than jacks. But even then, I don't really know how you make that read. But Lamb's the one making these big runs, not me, so I won't question too badly. But then we can only leave. This is really the Mickey Kraft show.
Yeah.
Otherwise, so Mickey Kraft begins with 2.8 million in this episode, and he goes through quite the up and down sort of thing. I have a whole paragraph here of just the Mickey Kraft moments in this episode because there's so much going on here. Really, Carol and Snuffer kind of go on the back burner after that first hand, and it's really all Mickey Kraft on that table 2 for the episode. So he wins a big flip against Guindu, who does this great job of just barely containing his anger once he busts on the river. Like he's like literally, you can see the steam coming out of his ears, and he like pulls a smile at the last second to shake Kraft's hand before he gets too angry about it. So that was pretty impressive emotional control there.
Yeah, good for him.
And then so that actually gets Kraft up to 4.5 million. If the blind's only like the 20K, 40K level at this point, so or 15K, 30K, so. A lot of chips to burn through, but he'll do it. He'll do it. He gives a pot over to Dubini. He calls 600,000 chips for a flip of 6-5, and then just folds on the flop when he misses. Like dumb stuff like that. Doubles up somebody else, and then just does some short stack shoving. Does not work out for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, he's the whole time though he's super gregarious and super nice. And that last hand against Rand, I mean, Rand is the one who's up out of his seat, nervous. And when the river hits, like Rand runs off to go like high five somebody on his rail. Like Rand, what the heck, man? Like, why are you so anxious about that? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, again, Mickey Kraft having a great time, was the chip
Yeah.
leader at one point. He's yelling, what happens when you guys win? When Israel says, Mickey, yes, we're fine. Just one, hey, Mickey. He's like, what happens when you guys win? Well, Taylor enjoys it. And then he starts dancing like, and then at one point he goes all in, he slow rolls Dubini.
Yeah, I know, right?
Turn, and then he's like, there's no way a king's coming. He goes, and then hits a double on the river, and then with that freshly doubled up stack, of course, punts it off the Ruan, shoving 7 deuce, flopping at 7 into his overpair. Just frustrating stuff. I mean, 146 points is still very impressive, but you really think what could have been if he had slowed down a little bit.
Yeah, I know, right?
And again, so Kraft goes out in 146, and then there's this super rushed ending where we see both Snuffer and Carroll busting. Carroll had a lot of chips, so we see him bust out with very few chips. A little strange. So we go from 146 left to 85 left in like 2 minutes in the episode. So it's very oddly paced, and especially considering that that's the majority of the bust ups from all of day 5.
I know, right? Isn't that weird?
So, pretty strange, but yeah. So a slightly rushed ending does not sink a very enjoyable episode. For the most part, Mickey Kraft was a great character. We didn't
of course.
We got just enough before we would have gotten too old, like a little too much of him. And he didn't tank and stall, none of the Keating or Kasuf isms to really kind of drag things down. So that's why he's one of the reasons why I enjoy this main event as much as I do.
Yeah, absolutely. When we end the episode, Damien Celos is 5th in chips with 8.4 million. Some guy named I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's at 8.3 million, and then Saout is at 8.2 million. So we're, those guys are starting to make a bit of a name for themselves. And then Blumstein gets a double knockout right at the end of the episode too. So, not too much in terms of the character building for the November 9, or rather the final 9, I should say. But we're starting to get the little bit of seeds for their stories as we
do a little bit, but the big problem is that we don't really see them playing hands. We mostly just see the camera, like the edit. They can just artificially put them in the edit because, here's Blumstein with 4 million chips. Here's Salas with 5 million chips. Like it's not really incorporating them into the narrative. It's just more of a, we know we have to include them because we know that they're in the final 9. So let's just show them for 2 seconds here, and that will count in the grand scheme of things. When it doesn't really do that so much.
Yeah.
And so that, pretty quick, but we've covered the first 8 episodes of this main event. And again, as a whole, it's not great. I mean, there's the first half of the first half, so the first quarter, pretty weak. The blinds not mentioned really at all.
Yeah.
In these episodes, like it's almost as if because they weren't doing the whole 1 blind level per episode structure, they just didn't think it mattered. But again, that was probably partially misleading because they had to combine day 1A and 1B into the episode, so they couldn't just hide that, now we're in a different level on the other day. But that kind of takes away from your ability to get a sense of the chip stacks and the poker play on display and where players are in relation to the tournament too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to sort of get a sense of a narrative running through everything from the first episode all the way down, because when you're going back to the day 1, here's a little bit of Mike Matusow and here's a little bit of Doug Polk and all that. Okay, it's nice to see these players come up, but it's harder to build a narrative and it's harder to tell a story coherently through time. And then, when you're not mentioning the blinds and you don't have the chips behind, so you don't quite understand why the players are making the decisions that they're making, it's harder to get a sense of narrative.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like, you had the Snyder cut of Justice League. It kind of feels like the pre-Snyder cut of Justice League. Like someone should have come in and really touched this up better and had a better flow of things. Just kind of felt like they didn't put as much thought into the edit as they normally would.
Yep, this is the Joss Whedon version of the WSOP.
Put that in the thumbnail, the Joss Whedon version of the WSOP. That would be great.
All right.
And so again, not great. The other episodes are all 45 minutes long. There's no bonus length episodes. It's still for the most. I mean, it feels as much like the style of main event coverage as it can be without actually feeling like the same. It would be kind of like probably the average is up to a C for me at this point still.
Yeah.
I think the back half will be much better as we get into the standard 4 episodes per day for day 6 and day 7. And then, of course, the 2-part final table to make a total of 18 episodes. So it'll probably, I'm going to guess, it'll be more of a B- by the end. I think it ends pretty strong. But we'll have to see when we get there.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so from there, I think I have to ask you, Sam, how has your latest Mind Sport Olympiad gaming gone for you recently?
Yep. So the Omaha event, which I finished in the top 4 in, resumed on Saturday after a bunch of back and forth because nobody had their schedules coordinated because I'm in the United States and players were in the UK and in Italy and whatever. So they finally got that act together on Saturday while I had COVID. So I was playing poker during COVID. I caught it on Tuesday, which would be last Tuesday, a week ago. I'm fine. I have a mild case, but when it came time to finally play poker on Saturday, I wasn't in the bestest mood. So I had a heads-up match, and I started the heads-up match. I think I lost the first hand, but then I, managed to get the lead. So I had him. We started at 10,000 chips each, and if I'm remembering correctly, the blinds were 15 and 30 with 10-minute levels. So a lot of time to play poker.
Yeah.
And I got him down to about 9K and things were going okay. And then at the end of the first level, he really just sort of changed his game and the cards also started going his way. And he was just playing very aggressive. Like he'd make a big he'd raise pre-flop, I'd call. He'd make a big post-flop bet, I'd call. And then he would bet like 3x pot on the turn. So he would just be like winning these sort of like moderately sized pots every now and again. And eventually he took the lead over me, but I kind of like was able to hover in like the 8 to 10K range. There were a couple of times where like I'm 1 pot away from regaining the lead again. And then he'd do that whole, raise fest again. And I would drop back down to, 8K. And then I would just build my stack up again, back down, build my stack up again, back down. And yeah, I think, I'm a tight player, and I think he spent the first level sort of just monitoring how my game was going, saw that I was a tight player, and then started that raise fest in order to take advantage of that. And I think that's a good way of doing that. I think he played my style of game right, and I just wasn't able to adjust. I was able to catch him a couple times with, a set here, a boat here. But yeah, for the most part, he was hitting a lot of great turns and rivers that would give me 2 pair, or give me a boat, or give me a set, and it would give him a flush or a straight or something. So that was sort of what was going on as well. So eventually, I think by, 45 minutes in, he had me down to like 6K. And then I raised big with aces, like ace, ace, jack, 2 with ace, jack suited or something. And the flop came up like jack 10, brick or something. So I had like a flush draw, top pair, the aces with the over pair and whatever. And so we did a raise fest and I went all in and he turned over, I think 2 pair, and then I just didn't improve. So that's how it ended. I would have had the chip lead barely if I had won that hand, and I could have kept battling. But yeah, I think he just outplayed me, and I just wasn't in a right headspace because of COVID or whatever to beat him. So I got 3rd place. He wound up doing the final round. He lost to the other guys. So I got 2nd place. Whatever. I would have liked for him to win because I thought he played well against me, and he did what he needed to do to beat me. Yeah. So I have gotten the bronze medal for that event. So it's my first poker medal, and then my 2nd Mind Sports Olympiad medal. And then I think I'm 3rd place right now overall in the rankings. Last time I checked, they may have updated that, so I don't know. And then the next event is on Saturday, I believe. I think that's a Hold'em event. I can't remember for sure. And then there's a couple other events for the next week. I think some of them are general. Some of them are inside the MSO Poker Club, which you can still join if you want to play. But some of them are also general, so anyone can sign up. I think I have, I'm going to try to win the events that are in the poker club. I think that's my best shot at winning another medal. I don't know if I can win overall. I think I have to win a tournament in order to have a shot of winning overall because the point system's so top heavy, but we'll see what happens. And I'm hoping for the best. And I think I'm playing okay. So,
Also, let's not forget that you played some of your best poker ever, possibly last week when, just before our interview with Mike, we were both in the Showtime Hold'em event, and you were chip leader for, or like close to the chip leader for pretty much all of that tournament until we had to stop to do the interview with Mike. And then you were like chip leader of like 14 left, and you got 6th place on autofold for the last hour.
Yeah, I thought it was. I was doing okay. Showtime Hold'em, is I could play Showtime Hold'em again. I think it's just a little unusual to have to deal with folded cards. And also, I think I mentioned this before, that MSO players tend to play a little bit tighter, I've noticed, than the average Poker Stars play. So that kind of helps my style a little bit. But yeah, I also caught a lot of cards that time too. Like I kept catching Ace King and Jacks and stuff. Like it was.
I don't know. I mean, so to set the context here, you were like c-betting like 95% of the time and getting folds from multiple players with like Ace Jack high you had, and they were just folding to you every time. So
yeah,
pretty incredible too.
Yeah, I mean that was incredible that they were respecting my bets and all that, but still, like I was catching Ace Jack, Ace Queen, Ace King, like I was running very well. The same with the Omaha event. The third round of that event, like I was catching like crazy so many cards, and then I also got a first round bye, right? Because they weren't running. So I got lucky with that event too. So don't think for a second, anybody listening to this, that I think I'm the bee's knees of poker now that I've got a bronze medal in a poker event. Definitely like the average tournament grinder would beat me heads up 95% of the time. Don't get me wrong.
No, but you're doing your thing in the MSO, and you're in the top few in the points right now, and you have a legit chance to really have a chance at this if you continue to.
Fingers crossed.
You've cashed in every event you've played, and which
That's
is all
true.
So you're. I think if you just cashed every event, you're going to have pretty solid chance to at least bronze medal it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. And again, it's good to end this podcast on a high note, because really this is again kind of another downbeat review of this sequence of episodes. Again, I'm very confident that the back half will be better.
Mm-hmm.
But from there, we'll see how it goes. But any final words you want to say about this 2017 main event?
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely see how this goes from here. I'd like not to assume, it's going to get better or worse based on how things go. Yeah, I mean, again, thank you for the fifth time to Michael Niwinski for on the podcast. Let us know if you want to show up on the podcast, if you want us to talk about any particular poker events. Ben and I talking about the Hellmuth thing. We both sort of saw clips from it. At the end of the day, we both kind of have the same opinion that everyone else has. Hellmuth is a jerk.
And a hypocrite. His interview at the start of the stream, where he mentioned that he's like friends with the Kardashians, was just so weird. Like he's clearly just trying to seem cooler than what he is because he's with a bunch of YouTube streamers and he thinks that that's what's popular. Yeah, that's about it. That's all I got to say about that. Yeah, well, thank you guys for listening. A little bit shorter episode this time, but we did cover only 8 episodes, so that kind of makes sense. We'll see you guys next time for the concluding portion of the 2017 main event, the John Hasp Show, as I like to call it, one of my favorite plays of all time. We'll be seeing you guys then. And again, comments, talk about your thoughts on these episodes, our thoughts about these episodes, and let us know if you are in the Mind Sport Olympiad or want to join in and face off against one of us and see how you fare against these poker nerds here. And until then, guys, we'll see you next time. Fold the aces. All right, bye, guys.